What's the politics of aging or aged care?
There's a negative view of aged care. Don't put me into one of those places. You don't join the military to become a millionaire. You join the military because of the purpose of defence. Building nursing homes under the new regulation was exactly the same as building warships.
And one of the speeches, Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer, talked about that aged care is one of the budgetary pressures.
Absolutely, and no one can deny that. Look at the demographic.
The challenge between federal government funds the aged care and the state government funds the health part of the equation, a supply of residential beds, then you end up going into the health system.
In the health system, which is by far more expensive patient in a hospital bed, depending on whether it's public or private. The numbers are huge. It can be anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 a day.
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you.
Hi, Stephen Becsi. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Dev. And how are you?
Doing well. Thank you for coming on a hot, sunny day in Perth.
I tell you what, I've even got the shorts. That's how hot it is over here right now.
Yes. You have very eclectic experience, growing up through the Navy services and working in the corporates now. I would like you to give us a bit of a background, people who don't know about you, growing up, and how has your life evolved, and then purpose, and then have you changed sectors and work?
Well, there's a good story with that. People often ask, how on earth did you go from the Navy or the military to aged care? Look, I grew up in Western Australia and joined the Navy when I was in high school and went to the Naval College and basically became a logistics engineer. So a lot of my training and initial career is in logistics management, qualified in the US, and basically managing big projects, big L projects, projects at billions of dollars, like the Anzac ship project. Everything there was about integrated logistics support. It was about structure. The military is about structure. But there came a point in my life when my third child was born that a decision needed to be made between staying in the military or supporting the family, and it just so happened at that time a position came up within Western Australia, back home, with Churches of Christ Homes and Community Services, which is now Bethany, and I made the jump and basically convinced the board at the time that building nursing homes under the new regulation that was coming in with accreditation and the new business models was exactly the same as building warships. It was about all these different elements that you had to pull together. So I made the jump. I'd say the biggest change for me was in the people space. When I retired in the Navy as a senior officer, you made decisions, you gave orders, and the troops basically carried out those orders without question. Went into aged care, and the first time I opened my mouth and said to a bunch of senior nurses, this is what I needed done, it wasn't how high, sir. It was basically, no, that's not the way we do business. So for me, there was learning about this completely different culture. Going from an organisation with thousands of people with an average age of 23, and back then, 80% male and 20% female, to aged care and my own organisation, which was an average age of 54 and 93% female and 7% male. Significant culture shock. But, I was able to bring the skills that I'd learnt in the military into aged care and, a discipline around bringing projects alive and then completing them.
In terms of growing up in WA back in the days, and how was the sense of the idea of getting into Navy came through your life? What was the sense of was it a sense of purpose you were seeking, or what was the intention there
Great question. It was all about purpose. I mean, you don't join the military to become a millionaire. You join the military because of the purpose of defence, the protection of the values of the country that you represent. So it was about putting the uniform on, it was about discipline, and it was about effectively for the Navy's logo to fight and win at sea. It was all about defence of this great nation. So very patriotic. My father was a refugee. He escaped Hungary when the Russians invaded, and so just instilled right from the word go, Australia took me in. It took me in as a refugee, and he was able to create a family here in Australia, and it was about preserving what in fact had saved him, as a refugee. So it was all about purpose. That's why I joined the Navy.
And then was there those conversations you had early on with your father on the idea of patriotism, or on the idea of how might you serve?
He liked me being in the Navy. He liked the idea of, once again, as I said before, defence of the values of the country. So he instilled that into me, and for whatever reason, I certainly absorbed what he taught, and I carried that through. I thought serving this country and wearing the uniform and wearing Australia on the shoulder or on the epaulette was an appropriate thing to do. But I also enjoyed it. It was fantastic being able to travel the world and see the world, which you could do with the Navy, and do a great deal of learning. So. But it was all about purpose. It was about doing the right thing. And for me, back then, that was the right thing to do.
In the time you were in Navy, what kind of skills do you think you grasped in terms of project management, leadership?
Okay.
And how are you learning those skills? Learning on the go, learning through academics, learning through doing things? What's the good mix?
Right. Well, you could go to the discussion around leadership and the discussion around management. I'm probably old school. Management, you can learn how to be a manager. You can do courses on Management 101. Leadership is one of those innate things. I think you're either a leader or you're not. And for me, I like servant leadership. For me, leading by example, doing the right thing, and for example, making everyone a cup of tea. You don't expect to, make or have a cup of teas made for you when you're, a senior person. There's nothing wrong with you still being able to make an EA, make a cup of tea for your EA or for your sailors or whatever. So servant leadership, I think, is something that is very powerful. It's demonstrative. People follow that, but I don't think it's something that you can learn. I think you're born with it, and it's then how do you grow it? And you can only grow leadership skills not by all the good that's being done, but when mistakes are made, that's when you really learn.
I think good leaders, one of the things which good leaders do as well for their team, to give them space to fail or make mistakes. Absolutely.
And there should never be punishment for mistakes. What there should be is learning. So you asked about, the things that I learned in the military. I did learn the discipline of logistics engineering. There are 10 elements to integrated logistics support, bringing all these elements together in the right quantities at the right times in order to produce something. So there's a real skill. I did my postgrad in the United States on that, and we were talking project management back in the 90s of greater than 5 billion back then. And there is a real science to logistics engineering. So you've got to do that. You've got to learn that. That's something that you do learn, as well as having, the ability to grow that leadership talent that exists, and certainly the military do that. It is all about leadership. So it's putting you into the places and the situations where you're able to practice it for real. So, you start small on a small ship or a small base, and as you become more senior, obviously your resources, the number of personnel that, that you're then responsible grows, and you grow it, from the bottom up. It's not lateral recruiting. The military don't take someone from, Civvy Street and make them a captain or an admiral straight away. You grow them from a midshipman through a sub-lieutenant to lieutenant, lieutenant commander. And as you grow, obviously your ability to learn and mature that leadership grows as well.
And transitioning from a discipline structure, engineering, project management to more of a care sector or a care economy, you gave the difference of the workforce was one, but how did you go through the first 1 year to 6 months in terms of grasping what's happening in the sector, because it's a fairly complex environment in terms of legislation, regulation, and compliances?
What a journey aged care is on. I joined what is now Bethany back in 2000, and so we just had accreditation come into the sector. So you began to get that structural change happening. If you're to really step back, what is happening in aged care? Okay, there is no way the government can afford aged care going forward as more and more people get into the age bracket of requiring aged care. There aren't enough taxpayers in this country. So having the government pay for everything to do with aged care is not real, because it's not going to be able to support it. The budget wouldn't cope. So through a process over a number of years, you're going to have that structural change where you go from a totally regulated environment to a more deregulated environment. If you can go from a deregulated environment, that means you're then able to access more resources to be able to provide the care. In other words, user pay. Those that can afford to pay should be able to pay. Those that can't afford to pay, the government should pay. So where are we at right now? We have a situation where at the end of last year, we had supply deregulate. So we had no more allocation of places. The government said to providers, you can build wherever you want. That's supply deregulating. If we look at price, at the end of last year, we had partial price deregulation. We still have the federal government funding care. We have ANAC in place, and the government believes, and rightly so, that it should be able to pay for the funding of all the clinical care requirements for residents in, residential aged care. But through the whole of your life, you've paid for your own accommodation, either a mortgage or a rent. You've paid for your laundry, you've paid for your food. And so that component has now been deregulated. If, based on your wealth, you either do or you don't pay. So we're getting into a space now of deregulation of supply, partial deregulation of price, which is forcing the sector now into structural reform. It is good news. It means that we're going to be able to look after the elderly going forward, even as more people, age and get into, the bracket of requiring care, because it's now not just the government, it's now government and user pay.
And one of the speeches, Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer, spoke last year. He talked about that aged care as one of the budgetary pressures or the care sector is one of the big budgetary pressures on the budget.
Absolutely, and no one can deny that. Look at the demographics. There's more and more people that are going to require care, and if you don't get aged care right, and if you don't have supply equaling demand, you could have, bed blockers, and they use that term in, the hospitals. If there aren't enough residential aged care beds, the elderly are then put into the hospitals and take up beds there. It's critical that we get residential aged care and home care right. And even the ratios of home care or, support at home to residential aged care. If you have so many people staying at home, and we understand that the majority of people do want to stay at home, but if you have more and more people staying at home, for some people, in the cases of dementia or high care, it's impossible to keep them at home. And therefore you still need beds in residential aged care. If you get that out of whack, it can affect the acute sector as well. So the Treasurer is right. We do need to fund aged care properly.
And how do you manage the challenge between federal government funds the aged care and the state government funds the health part of the equation? So that there's an overlap or a friction there, because if there are oversupply of people or you don't have enough supply of residential beds, then you end up going into the health system.
In the health system, which is
already failing,
far more expensive. I mean, you only need to Google it. If you look at what the cost per day to have a patient in a hospital bed, depending on whether it's public or private or whether it's metro or regional, but the numbers are huge. It can be anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 a day to have a patient in a hospital bed. Look at residential aged care; it's nowhere near that. It is significantly cheaper. So if you don't have aged care right, the impact on the states in the acute sector is significant.
Do you think there's enough economic indicators or levers has been pulled from states' point of view to create more supply of
very, very interesting. I mean, clearly aged care is the domain of the federal government, and clearly acute care, hospitals, is the domain of hospitals. But we saw
federal government supports some clinical care at aged care as well, which is...
Yeah, I mean, you've got transition beds now to assist, but let's look at the last election in Western Australia. We actually had the West Australian government as an election promise, and I've only read in the papers, I think it was this week, it might have been the end of last week, certainly within the last number of days, that the government here in Western Australia pledged $100 million of cheap loans to residential aged care providers to build more beds, which would obviously take some impact off the hospital system. So you're beginning to see state health beginning to cross over into aged care in order to reduce the pressure on its own hospital systems. So each state, is involved in some way or another.
And if you see a close cousin of aged care model of care, probably is disability care. And then the NDS review, which happened a couple of years ago, which talked about the shared responsibility between the state and the federal at the local level.
Okay.
So how do you see that playing in that scenario?
How interesting. NDIS, aged care. look, let's even go further. Childcare. Let's look at acute. I'll speak
Health.
from health from a perspective that I saw in a previous role, whereas the chief executive of a big organisation here in Western Australia, Bethany, that had at the time it had a hospital, private hospital, and it had residential aged care facilities and home care. The business model for private hospitals is completely different to the business model for residential aged care. You know, in hospitals, certainly when I was there, the owner of the hospital in a way is the landlord. And you find that the consultants and specialists are the people that are actually pushing the business through a building, and the aim is to get throughput through your operating theatres. That's not aged care. So although theoretically you could talk about the umbrella of all these different care sectors coming together, in practice, the operating models are so different, you run the businesses differently. So I really don't know how in a practical sense you can pull it together. I think that's a difficult call because you make different decisions.
The current organisation you are the chief executive of, Apollo Care, your growth model has been very different than a typical organic growth model.
Yes.
People could argue both sides, you know, it's good or bad or ugly from a different lens. But in terms of you talk about the genesis or the idea behind the way you grow and the way you run an organization of your size.
Okay. Apollo Care is an alliance of not-for-profit providers, and when we first thought about the idea of creating Apollo Care, which was back in 2013, that was the genesis. What we saw back then was distressed facilities in regional Australia, and the model wasn't working very well. There were many facilities that didn't have the scale or the resources, and therefore were struggling from a compliance perspective and financially. If you went into sanction, you got into trouble, and many closed down. But in regional Australia, brand and legacy is very important. Many of these nursing homes were started through chook raffles in the local pubs, where the towns decided that they needed to raise funds to build their own nursing home, to look after their own people. And it grew out of that. So there's a real sense of ownership by the town. And therefore, if facilities started getting into trouble, the options were close or be taken over. And if you're taken over by another organisation, unless it's a co-op, you lost your identity, you lost your legacy.
Yeah.
And to people in the bush, it's bad. It's not like the metro. So we decided that we would try and work out a model where you could somehow preserve your legacy even if you got into trouble. So rather than and I'll talk about it based on my previous organisation as a big not-for-profit. If you took over a struggling facility, the constitution of that little facility went, the name went, and you got absorbed into
the bigger.
So the name changed. There was no little local board anymore. There was the one bigger board that controlled many facilities. And I think where that really struck home for me, and it haunted me, this is a little story here. We took over a little facility in Western Australia. And I remember walking into that facility on the day it was acquired, and an old fellow came up to me and put his hand up and said, "Now that you've taken over this facility, I suppose that means I can't drink beer anymore. And I thought to myself, I don't know where this is going. I said, no, what made you say that? And he said, well, you're a big church organisation. You don't believe in that type of thing. So now that you've taken over our little facility, it means that I won't be able to drink beer, and I love beer. And I said, well, how about I take you down the pub and we have a talk about whether or not you can drink a beer while we're having a beer. The message behind that was they thought they were going to lose their identity and what was important to them in their home. That's what happens in an acquisition. You lose the objects in your constitution and you take on whatever the bigger organisation is. It's the little milk bars versus the Coles and Woolies.
Yeah.
And we thought, how on earth do we preserve the identity of the town that built and created their own home for their own residents? So we basically came up with a different model where we created an approved provider, as it was then, now registered provider, and the provider could raise the capital to therefore be able to invest into the facility and get it back up, because generally it's been unloved if it's been in trouble. But we keep the constitutions of every organisation that joins the alliance. We keep the local board, but we put some directors on that board who are part of the approved provider. So the model is working really well. So basically we're able to preserve that legacy, but under or being provided the services from a registered provider that is able to have the bandwidth to cover all of the regulations required of the new Act.
It's sort of a hybrid between co-op and the old school acquire and become very big, so that you can have economies of scale.
Yes.
Because you're so large, you can save the cost on the legal fees because you have one legal counsel, regulatory work.
Correct. If you look at Stuart Brown's numbers there is certainly an advantage in being a larger provider. You do get those economies of scale, and you find that the administration costs or overhead costs per resident or per bed per day reduce. They go up between 7 to 15 facilities. There is this funny piece in the middle, but after that you find the numbers drop. So there are benefits to economy of scale. You see that with the prices with Coles and Woolworths, but everything becomes vanilla. So it was, how do you preserve the identity and acting like an individual standalone provider, but get those economies of scale? So you're exactly right. It is a hybrid model, and we've worked very hard, with the Charities Commission and the Department and ASIC and Tax Office to create something where you're getting the economies of scale, you're getting access to cheap capital, and you might find that your access to cheap capital, it could be cheaper than borrowing from a bank, which, not-for-profits are restricted to either using balance sheet or using their retained earnings, or borrowing from a bank, where you're able to access the cheaper capital, create those economies of scale, but keep the individual identity of every single facility. So what a way you've got is the RSM at each site. Your site manager is, in a way, a mini CEO, within the rules of the alliance.
And how do you, as an alliance, how do you add not just aged care but disability organizations into the alliance? And what other complexity you see when you add people from other care sector into the alliance?
That's a real interesting question. You've obviously researched very well, because when we first started, there was discussion around us solely acquiring distressed residential aged care facilities. That's where our core strengths and our core business is. I did, however, say that if you're going to go into regional Australia, you'll find that many of the facilities
are doing multi
because so you'll have childcare, you'll have possibly the medical centre, you'll have retirement living, you'll have the residential aged care. So be prepared.
Allied health as well.
Allied health as well. Even in our own organisation, you know, through these 5.5 years of operating, what have we acquired?
There might be pharmacy and lotto as well. You don't know.
It could be. Well, it's a lottery when you go in to find out, and you do discover in the due diligence. It is all of that. It is. We do have a medical centre. We have childcare. We have retirement living. We have NDIS. We have residential aged care. You can't ignore those other businesses because it's what is fundamental to the DNA of the town. So you begin to stretch your resources, and then you begin to dilute your expertise around your core business, which is residential aged care. So we're working with, you know, each of the towns that have all these other businesses. We manage them. In some cases, we'll then do further analysis on it. Is there a way of maybe being, you know, the landlord and bringing an expert or a subject matter expert in to run that business for which we are not a subject matter expert? And that's okay. You can do that one. And we're looking at those particular strategies right now for some of the areas where we're not experts.
And there's some case studies of aged care providers who are primarily aged care providers. They delved into disability for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And then they realized, let me move out of the disability and stay within aged care. What do you think are the lessons learned from those kind of case studies? People who choose to expand from aged care to disability as a portfolio, and then with 4 to 5 years of, you know, when the plan finishes, the strategic plan was probably done. It was a 5-year plan, and they said, okay, let's diversify the portfolio. And then the next plan was not to diversify, but to be effective in what you do.
Okay, here we go. We go on to strategic plans and what it is we think we should be doing versus what we end up doing. Look, my last role in the military, I got recalled back into the Navy in 2009, 10, 11 to be the director of the Strategic Reform Program, which was a $20 billion reform of defence. So I basically led the charge for the strategic reform of Navy. Strategic plan in place. You try and predict where you would like to go in the future, and then hopefully you pull the resources together in order to enact what you believe that future is. Step forward to 2019. I guarantee you, we had our strategic plan for Apollo Care. Every major company had a strategic plan around what it was going to do in 2020. How many people achieved their strategic plan when this thing called COVID happened? So you might have a plan that says, I'm in this particular core business and we're going to grow this other business, like Apollo Care. Our main business was always going to be residential aged care. We always knew that we might have these additional services, and we have. We've had home care and we've had NDIS. We've picked that up as well. In picking that up, it's there are people there are services being provided, and as you go on the journey, you might invest significantly into it in order to grow it to make it core business, because that's your intention. But it might not work out, or it might work out. So I don't know. I think it is almost case by case. So if you look at case studies, there are organisations that have attempted to go into NDIS and gone.
Silver Chain is one example.
Okay, that's an example. And then they might have the balance sheet to be able to push through the hurt and acquire all the knowledge required and experience in order to make it successful, but it might not. You can't deny that NDIS is it's larger than aged care.
You're right.
Just look at the allocation from the government towards NDIS, and there will be organisations that are big, that have the resources to be able to learn and do well in it, but there may be others that pick it up and then decide for whatever reason it's not part of their...
Do you think you mentioned COVID, it made us realize that not everybody's ready for or resilient to have that shocker in terms of the cash flow with financial and then delivery of care?
Yep.
Do you think organizations today in the care sector are resilient enough to, if there's something else has to happen, would they have emergency plans today in place that we are resilient to deliver care without, and there's a consistency of care being delivered, so without impacting, because all these hiccups will lead to high anxiety, not just with residents or people who are we giving care to, but also high anxiety for people who are caring for them or the family members or people around them. So it's an anxiety, walkway or a pathway, something that has to happen again.
Okay, I think it's an individual by individual case. I mean, you look at very large organisations, once again, with large balance sheets. They can weather a storm. There is no doubt about that. Smaller organisations might not necessarily have the resource bandwidth to survive. So I think it's harder at the smaller end than it is at the larger end. But there are many benefits to smaller organisations. That community far better because that's the whole of your business. You're not stretched across multiple states, for example. And decision making. A smaller organisation operating in a suburb can make decisions very quickly. They're more nimble, they're more agile. Larger organisations are nowhere near as agile. Take a patrol boat. The captain turns around and goes, hard port or hard starboard, you turn the wheel and a patrol boat turns instantly. An aircraft carrier, a bigger organisation, when you say hard starboard or hard port, that carrier, if it's moving, will still, even though you've turned the wheel and rudder, will still go in a straight line for another kilometre. The sheer momentum means it can't turn fast. Big organisations are the same. We're trying to challenge that right now. We're now a reasonably large organisation operating in multiple states, 14 facilities right now, plus all the additional services we provide. But we're in the cloud. We're virtual. We do not have a head office with people at desks and sitting on chairs at desks. We're not. We are in the cloud. We're virtual. Everyone carries the information required for them to make a decision in the palm of their hand, on their handheld. So there are ways of speeding up the process to become more agile in larger organisations, but it costs a lot to set it up. You can't have legacy systems. You've got to be able to adapt and change, and I mean rapidly change. A smaller organisation might be able to change its clinical system or its financial system quickly. There's only one, facility, for example. If you're large, it takes more, unless you are in the cloud. And if you're in the cloud, you can literally turn systems off, write an API and bolt a new one on. That's the future. I mean, we're dabbling with AI right now. We've been building AI now for, it's coming up to 2 years, and it takes years for machines to learn. But our machine learning is happening. It's crawling, but we've now got our facility managers being able to ask Max AI, which is short term for maximising. We're trying to maximise our performance. So our RSMs, rather than going through the head office to get to our analyst team to look at spreadsheets to come up with numbers, AI is able to respond immediately to our RSMs about questions about improving performance. So the world is changing right now. There's a pivot happening.
So that decentralized decision-making model and the time which you're saving in terms of going back and forth, the admin waste, which you are not having right now through the AI. How has that decentralized? Because there's a good mix of, because you already have some directors on the boards of these entities in regions and all of that. So there's part decentralization, but still there is a part control from a unique point of view that you have some people on each board. So there's partly controlled, partly decentralized.
Yeah.
It's a very, very eclectic mix of control and giving your control away.
Yeah. Okay.
So what things you want to control and what are the things you want to let go?
Okay. I can bring it down to an example that people could understand. If you are the site manager of a one facility organisation, so an aged care facility in a town, that site manager is generally the CEO, reporting to the town's people who sit on the board. That's how it works. If you are a big centralised organisation that has a head office, you are a site manager and you're given a budget, and you're given a financial level of authority in which you can make decisions. So you may be able to make the decision to do a refurb on a room after a resident has left for $1,000. Okay. Whereas if you were the CEO of that town, if you needed a $50,000 refurb because you're upgrading to do, it needs an upgrade, you as the CEO generally have a delegation of authority that allows you to do it without having to wait for the next board meeting. So they're the two extremes. So I could say that in our organisation, our RSMs have a level of delegation of authority that is significantly higher than most large organisations that have a controlled level of delegation. So we're, as I said, we're making the site managers more like CEOs, but they are still bound within some rules at the policy level, although they may be more lenient. Why? Because we don't want them being slowed down to have to wait for a board or an executive in another city to make those decisions. They can make them.
I was talking to one of the much larger providers, close to $1 billion business on the East Coast, and talking to the CIS, which is the Chief Information Security Officer. And he used a very good statement for the care workers. The systems are designed in a fashion to achieve this one line: hold the hand, not the pen. When you're caring, so you're not making notes with pen, but you're mostly caring all the time rather than making notes and doing admin work. So that's where it hit home, that hold the hand, not the pen. So how do you see that mindset of caring, focusing more on care work at the front line than doing the admin or case notes?
I mentioned before we have handhelds because all of our systems are in the cloud. Therefore, we have care workers that have access to the information or the systems that you have access to on your phone are the systems that are appropriate for you to do your job. So if you're a care worker on the floor in a facility, you need to have, the clinical system. We happen to have Carekeeper, where you're able to do the work on your phone. So instead of going back to a nurse station to then write up the notes, what you do is you walk up to the resident. You have the phone there. You go tap, 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 as you're discussing, as you're talking. So you're actually able to, modify your care notes or whatever, or even speak. Now you can do that. And the care notes are amended online real time. So you do not need to go to a nurse station. In fact, you don't even need to build nurse stations anymore, because you're doing it in the palm of your hand as you are on the floor with the resident. There are ways and means now with technology that you can do your work without having to not spend time at a nurse station or a desk. And we're finding that we're beginning to now start the time in motion studies for organisations that we've acquired or that have joined the Alliance, where they had old legacy systems, where they did have paper or whatever, notes that you then had to transcribe, versus what staff are doing now. And there are some significant savings in terms of time spent now with the resident rather than doing the paperwork. It's certainly more effective now and efficient.
The old school question on the whole care economy has the same pool of workforce which they access, whether it's aged care or disability or other care sectors. And we have the limited supply of the workforce. So how do you deal with, one, the care workforce challenge, and second, having care workforce in the regional areas?
Okay. We know that in regional Australia, we have a significant workforce problem. We have one facility in a city, in Sydney. We don't use agency. There's enough people in Sydney that allows our aged care facility to not have agency. There's enough people around. That is not the case in regional Australia. There are not enough people in the town, so therefore you do have agency. The government doesn't fund that on cost of agency, so you get into trouble very quickly in regional Australia. ANEC's beginning to realise those additional costs, which is a good thing. How do we resolve it? Traditionally, like everyone right now, if you can't get the people to work in an aged care facility, you need to bring them in, primarily from the cities or overseas. And we're doing a lot of that. We're bringing lots of people, and there's the PALM schemes and everything else. But that's not the end of the problem. If you bring people in to Australia from overseas, you become a real estate organisation. We have bought so much real estate in this last 24 months. We're about to buy a motel in a town, but we buy houses, we buy lots of accommodation, because you've got to accommodate the people that you bring in to obviously work in your facility. So it's a different place. So there is the pain associated with bringing people from overseas. If you really want me to talk about a frustration, and I don't like talking about frustrations, I know that we're now beginning to look at telehealth. If telehealth was recognised for care minutes, we would have a significant problem solved in regional Australia. Why do I say that? There are people, nurses qualified in the city, young mums, for example, that would give their time from home to be the RN on shift in that home overnight, because the telehealth system is placed where the care worker can walk around with the trolley with the appropriate medical equipment that would allow the RN to be able to manage situations. The thing that's stopping that is, it doesn't count towards care minutes right now. That's using technology to resolve a problem that is real in regional Australia. Now, that will take time, and I know the government's looking at it right now, but these things take years, unfortunately. But that would be, for example, a way where technology would help the problem of not enough staff in the bush. if you're going to use care minutes as, the anchor, as the baseline. If you can't get an RN in the bush, don't sanction the facility because you're not able to. Use technology and bring the RN through technology into the home. I'm certain there are enough smarts in this country to allow that to happen. It's a matter of catching up with the advances in technology. So that's about one frustration you might get out of me.
I was not trying to get a frustration out of you. I was just trying to guess your perspective, because your diversity of portfolio is primarily regional. So,
and regional. If you want to make an aged care
the old school idea,
work,
the tyranny of distance.
The tyranny of distance is real, and if you want to make a facility work and work really well, occupancy needs to be high. You need residents in a facility, because if you don't, it doesn't work financially. And then if you've got the residents, you need to have the staff. And with the care minute requirements and the bush, you may not get it. So that is an area that needs to be addressed. But if you do have a good facility, Sir Richard Branson, he always uses the example in the airline industry with passengers. What would you prefer to fly with? An airline that has a brand new aircraft, but when you walk on board the plane there, you're not treated with respect, you're not treated with dignity, and you're a paying passenger? Or would you prefer to have an older aircraft that's maintained well, but when you're welcomed onto the plane, you're seated down, you're treated with courtesy and respect? That's the model. So, we have a lot of facilities in the bush that are older. There's nothing wrong with giving those older facilities a bit of real love and attention, get the maintenance going, do the refurbs, and have enough staff. That's the winning solution.
What's the politics of aging or aged care?
What do you mean when you say the politics of aged care?
How does structurally or politically aged care, the term aged care or aged care sector, or we want to work for elderly Australians at the is front-ended to hide things in the back? Motives.
Okay, look, if you speak to most people on the street, if people ask me, what do you do? And I say, I'm in aged care. The reaction generally is not the same as if I said, I'm in the military or whatever. There's a negative view of aged care. Don't put me into one of those places. Unfortunately, that is a really old view. If you look at the way this industry has matured over the last 2 decades, the resources that have been put in, the government, the current government has certainly resourced the staff. Everyone's now paid a decent salary. It's been recognised for what it is, which is a good industry. It's a care industry, looking after the older generation and giving them the quality of life that they deserve, I think is one of those fundamental requirements of DNA of a society. You judge a country by how it looks after its young and how it looks after its elderly and seniors. I think it's a great industry. I think it's maturing, and with what's going on in the restructure of the sector right now, as I said, you've got very strong regulation around care. Why? There's a duty for the government that is paying for that care to ensure that every care dollar is spent and spent well. So there is strong regulation there, but they're allowing the market to improve in other areas of where they're building those homes, and the non-clinical care requirements now that should be provided to the aged that deserve it. And when you do start talking to people about what's going on in the sector and how it's working, and if you ever been into a nursing home, and I deliberately use the term nursing home. I know that's not a term that's used much now, you know, aged care facilities and all the rest of it. Nursing home, 2 words. Nursing, care, home. It's a person's home. It's real. It should be, you invest in your own home. We should be able to invest in the home of the elderly, and I mean the real frail and aged. And when you talk to people about it, people go, I never saw aged care as anything like that you've described it. I say it is the sector that you need to be in. You know, the young people with what they can do. We've got a facility in Victoria. And I went there before Christmas, and I walked around and went on all the floors. And the number of younger care workers, and you're talking 17 and 18-year-olds with their handhelds, doing their work, able to input the data there. And I asked, I said, what's attracted you to aged care? And they say, it's great. I don't have grandparents for whatever reason coming into their homes and providing that care. It's like having a nana and a granddad. It's really interesting listening to the younger people that are providing care to the older generations, but it's not pieces of paper. It's using modern technology, but they're doing something for the elderly that they might not have necessarily had inside their own families. It's really interesting right now. I think it's a terrific sector to be in.
In the next 5 and 10 years, the next decade, what kind of reforms do you think should happen to keep on moving to the highly either deregulated environment or the good mix of regulation and deregulation?
I think while the government is going to continue to fund care, there is going to have to be regulation, because how are you held accountable to the taxpayer? You're using taxpayers' money for the purposes of care. I think there will always be regulation. Regulation can stifle innovation. And I'd like anyone to challenge me on that. I think regulation, rules, don't allow for free thinking all the time. But we have, as I said, a deregulated supply, so you can build wherever you like. You have partial deregulation of price, which means you're going to be able to do a lot in the laundry and the cleaning and the food space. We're going to see a lot of change in terms of food. There's going to be a whole lot of good stuff come in. I don't know. We're into the 2nd month now of the new Act. It will be good to form a view and answer your question in another 18 months, once we've seen how not only the providers, not only the consumers, but even the Commission, we're all going to walk on this new journey based on, a user rights model. So 2 months into something that will take years to develop and settle down to. So I think aged care will only get better. I think, however, with more and more people being given access to support at home, you're going to find more people staying at home longer, which means at some point there will be a crunch point where the support at home services will not be able to cater for the additional 24/7 required for the real frail and aged and people with dementia that will require residential aged care. So residential aged care, I think, and it's only my view, is going to go from what is high care to high care. It's almost going to move to subacute.
Yeah.
That's the way I think it's going to go. So how do we deal with more subacute? Time will tell.
Can I ask you to conclude with some key lessons you have learned across your career, through military and through care?
It's all about people. The key lesson. In order to have a great, not a good organisation, but a great organisation, you need great systems and processes, and you need a great culture. You need both operating together. My experience, and from what I've seen so far, both in the military and in aged care, completely different sectors, if you have great systems and processes and a bad culture, it will fail. Fail. Because you might have the systems and processes, but if the people don't want to follow it, it's broke. If you have a great culture and bad systems and processes, the people will still make it work if it's a great culture, but it will be inefficient or not as effective. So for me, it's all about people. If the people are committed to provide the service, they'll make it happen. If you've got great systems and processes, they'll make it happen more efficiently and effectively. So for me, if you're a chief executive, if you're on the board, if you're a senior manager, it's all about your staff. It's all about your people. Invest in your people and everything else will happen.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks a lot.
Very much appreciated. Thanks, Dev.